What's happening, Booth Junkies? Mike Delgadio here with another video. Today we're going to talk about jargon and things that you might hear during a recording session. I've got a whole list of terms over here on my computer and we're going to try and go through them so that you can get a sense of things you might hear during a recording session. When you're hired to do something, these are words that you can expect to hear. I'll just try and give you a quick overview of what each of these words are. The first one is talent. And that's you. You're the talent. You're the person that's being hired to act as the artist, to deliver the lines. The client is the person who's going to listen to you. So you're the talent and you're working for the client. There may also be an engineer in the room. The engineer is the actual person who's working the board. And the board is the mixing console, the equipment that they're going to be using. So they will run the board and the client will listen to you in the studio, and you are the talent. You are hired for a session. A session is an amount of time that you're hired to work for. You might be hired for a 1-hour session to record some spots, or those are television, or those are advertisements. You might be hired to record a session for some tags, and those are the little slogans usually at the end of a spot. So those are different aspects of what you might be hired for during a session. The next thing is cans. So they may tell you to put on your cans in the booth, and they're just headphones. And if they say, do you have enough juice in the cans? That means, is it loud enough in your headphones? It's old-timey thing. You don't hear it that much, but I have had some engineers say, do you have enough in the cans? Once you're in the booth, if you've never seen the script before, the first thing that you'll do is a cold read. And the cold read is when you have no idea what the script is, and it's the very first time you read it. Sometimes you'll be asked to audition with a cold read because they want to see how your script interpretation is. They'll want you to see a script having never read it before and deliver it into the mic as a cold read. It's usually okay if you stumble on those or if you do it, but they're trying to get a sense of what your ease is and how quickly you can interpret a script. You may also be asked to do a dry read. A dry read is when you're doing a script and you don't have any guide to go for. They haven't given you the time, or there's no music bed in your headphones. If you're doing it to a commercial that you can't actually see the TV commercial, or you can't hear the background music of what will be, you'll have no references during a dry read. When you're first in the booth and you're working with another actor, they may ask you to do a run-through, and that is to just go through the script once or twice, to just read it, to get a sense of what your delivery is, how fast you're going to do it, what it's going to sound like to the other person. It's like a rehearsal, and usually with voiceover, you get very little in the way of rehearsal time, so a run-through can really help. Once you're ready to go, the engineer will, after you've put on your headphones, he'll ask for a level, or he'll say, can I take a level? And during a level, the idea is you're even though you're not being recorded, he's going to ask you to deliver the most energetic part of the script in the way that you intend to deliver it into the microphone. And that allows him to adjust all the settings on his mixing board to make sure that it's not too loud or too soft. And your idea as the talent is to try and deliver it as closely as possible to the way you're going to really do it. Don't be surprised, though, if the engineer is secretly recording your take, because sometimes when you're really comfortable and there's no pressure of being recorded, often those are some of the best takes you have. The take itself, I don't think I've defined the word take. The take is just once through on a script. It could be a line, it could be a word, but every time you repeat it, it's a new take. So if you're saying, I'm loving it, and that's your whole line, then that's take one. Then you repeat it, I'm loving it. That's take two. I'm loving it. That's take three, right? So you're just doing different repetitions of the same line. It's a new take every single time. Notes. If you've delivered a line you can ask for notes, or they may say, I'm going to give you some notes. And that is feedback on your performance, and it's usually something specific that they want you to change, to think about. So if you say, I'm loving it, they might give you some notes and say, no, you're going to assert it. I'm loving it. And they'll give you, or they'll say, could you hit this one word harder? And that means to emphasize that one word more. So they will give you notes. And you can also say, do you have any notes for me on that? It's just the art term. Instead of saying, do you have any feedback, you usually say, do you have any notes? Or they're going to give you some notes. As you're recording, you will often do several takes. Take 1, take 2, take 3. And then once they say they've got a good take, that's one that they like, they'll often ask you for a safety. And that's them asking you to do it again the same way. And usually what that's for is it's usually a bit of comfort to the actor. So if you've done one that's pretty good, they'd be willing to put that on the air or wherever it's going to go. A safety will get you to do it again. And now that the pressure's off because you've got a good one, sometimes that safety take feels a lot more natural. It flows because you don't have to worry about it. You've got one, and so a safety will often be a better one. It used to be in the old tape days in case something glitched and the tape was bad, but now with digital, that doesn't really matter. So the safety is really more of a psychological thing because the pressure's off. Sometimes when you're asked to do lines, you'll be asked to do some wild lines. And usually it's an aside or an ad-lib or a slogan or something where they'll ask you to do some wild takes where you're not actually doing the whole script through. They might say, could you give me do a few wild of the slogan. And that just means try that line a few different ways right in a row with just a short break in between. I'm loving it. I'm loving it. I'm loving it. I'm loving it. So different takes, and those are just wild ones, and they'll splice in the one you want. They might also say, could you ABC it, or could you give me 3 in a row of that? And those are just ways to get you to do that same thing over and over again. Then also might be ways to do, they might also ask you to do some wild ad-libs. And sometimes if you're doing banter between two actors, they might ask you to go, uh-huh, oh, words like that they can splice in to fill in any gaps and reaction shots to make a script feel more natural and not just words, part. Okay. If you've made a mistake, or if they like most of a take and they want to fix one word, have you do a different inflection, they'll ask you to do they'll do something called either a drop in or a punch in. And the way that works is they're going to play the whole thing back to you, and you'll speak along with the script, trying to do it exactly the same way. And then all of a sudden the audio is going to stop in your headphones, and you're going to keep talking and deliver that word or words or portion of the script that they feel could be done better or could be done differently. So you'll go, it's hard to explain here, but you'll be speaking along and trying to be perfectly in sync with yourself in the headphones from a previous take. Then suddenly it will stop, and you'll keep going. And they'll be recording you for just that new section. It's called a drop in or a punch in. Sometimes when you're working on a script or working on an ad or a video, they will give you what's called a scratch track. And a scratch track is really someone who's not the voice actor. It could be the animator or the engineer who has recorded themselves into their phone, into their computer speakers. So they have a sense of the timing of an advertisement or a video or something like that. And you're going to try and hit those timings. You're not necessarily going to have to mimic their inflection, but they're trying to give you a sense of where the timing is on that script. And so that will be a scratch track. They will often say during a video, this is the hero, and that is the hero is the most important word, phrase, or line in a script. So if you're talking about McDonald's, when you get to the line that mentions McDonald's, that's the hero, and that's the word that you got to hit perfectly. You got to emphasize it just right. That's the part that that's the part that they want the listener to hear the most. It's the hero. So if it's about the Big Mac, then you're going to hit the Big Mac the right way. Converse to that is the throwaway. So there'll be some parts of the script that you're going to speed through, you're going to gloss over, you're going to de-emphasize, and that's the stuff that you throw away. That's the less important part of the script, the connective words, the phrases that lead you into the hero. So you're going to either throw away or you're going to highlight things. You're going to highlight the hero. Once they have a good take that they like and that they've approved, sometimes that's called a buy. They call that the buy take. That's the take that they're going to buy to use. So sometimes you'll have a couple of different buys, but if they say, "Yep, that's a buy," that's the one. They're happy with that take, and you'll move on to the next part of the script or whatever else you're doing. Or you might be done at that point. Once they have the buy, you're good. They may ask you to slate. A slate is during an audition recording. That's when you introduce yourself. You say what client you're working for and how many takes. This is Mike Delgadio for McDonald's. I have 2 takes for you. That's a slate. If you're in a session, they may ask you to slate each take. So you might say something like, this is Act 1, Scene 2, Page 3, Line 4, Take 1. And then you deliver. This is Act 1, Scene 2, Page 3, Line 2, Take 2. And they'll help you slate, but it's a way for the engineer. If he's got this big, long recording session with lots of repeats, they may ask you to slate each one. It says Take 1, Take 2. And they'll give you a guide on how much they want you to slate. Doesn't happen so much now with the digital consoles where they can put markers to mark it and they type it in. But I have had remote sessions where they ask you to slate each one. Ooh, okay, we're blasting through this. Next thing, so that's all the stuff that will happen in the booth for direction for delivery. There's a couple of other technical terms that they might have. They might say you're popping the mic, or I'm getting pops, and that's when you're sending a blast of air into the microphone, and it makes this deep bass, and it ruins the take. So if you're right up on it and you're blasting air into the mic, you're popping the mic, and that's called a plosive. And they'll ask you to back off the mic or turn your head or something so that you're not sending air directly from your mouth into the microphone and causing it. Because once you've popped it, you've ruined that take and they have to redo it again. Along those lines, they may ask you to eat the mic. So right now I'm, this far off the mic. I'm about a foot off the mic. But that doesn't necessarily lead to the most intimate of delivery. So they may ask you to get right up on the mic. And that really gives a sense of intimacy, and you can sound like you're right in that person's ear. Now that leverages something called the proximity effect. And the proximity effect is the tendency for a microphone that as your voice gets closer to it, the source gets closer to the microphone, the amount of bass increases, so that even though you're talking really quietly, you can really make your voice deep. And that's just a proximity effect. Most mics do it, some mics don't. But if they ask you to eat the mic or get right up on it, they're trying to leverage the proximity effect. And so you'll see it sounds much more intimate when you're that close. Let's see. They may ask you to connect your words. Connect your words is to try and eliminate any pauses. So as you're delivering lines, especially during advertisements, they don't want any dead air in between the words. So they'll ask you to smooth out your words so that you don't leave any breaks in between. And it really is the way that you have to learn to inhale very quickly, take little tiny micro breaths along the way, and just practice not putting big pauses in between words. A pause for dramatic effect doesn't work in voiceover. You need to move it. You move through it quickly. Last couple, a bed. A bed is when you have a music bed, something that you might be listening to or they're going to put under your voice. And sometimes they'll play for you what the music bed is, and so that you can hear what the timing is and what the music is that you're going to be talking over, help you match tone, pace, things like that. So the music that's played under you is called the music bed. The engineer on the other side of the booth will have a microphone, and that they will communicate through you over the Talkback. And it's usually just a button that they press, and while they're pressing it down, their microphone is live and you can hear it. It should be off when you're recording and on when they're giving you feedback. If you can't hear them, you see them talking, but you can't hear them, you just tap on your microphone, get their attention, tap on the mic, and that tells them that they haven't pressed the Talkback button. But it's just the way that they communicate back to you over the Talkback mic. Last two pieces of lingo that you'll encounter. One is called a patch. So if you're in a studio A and somewhere else there are people listening to you in another city, another building, somewhere else, those two studios they're patched together. It might be over something really high quality like an ISDN line or a Source Connect line where they're going to record you in their studio even though you're here. You're patched together over high quality. Or they'll be doing something called a phone patch where they're just listening to you low quality over a phone line or Skype or something like that. But you're doing the recording either in your booth or your engineer on your end is doing the recording, and they will send the final copy. But it gives them a way to hear what your delivery is and to give you any notes, any direction along the way. The last thing that is really much more of an engineering term, but it's called the wet and the dry signal. And this is sort of a little bit different than all the other ones. But the wet, sometimes you'll hear in your headphones, they might say, do you want the wet or the dry? And really that is prior to an effect being added or after an effect being added. Wet and dry. So before, as your voice goes into the mic and into the first effect, it's dry. After the effect is applied to it, it becomes wet. So if you're adding reverb to it, the reverbed signal is the wet signal. Now, if that wet signal is going into yet another signal after that, say a compressor, after it comes out of the reverb, it becomes dry again, and it's the dry signal that goes into the compressor, and after it gets compressed, it's now the wet signal again. So as it goes through each part in the chain, as it goes into one effect, it's dry. As it goes out of an effect, it's wet, and then it turns dry again and goes into the next one. That's really more for your signal chain when you see sliders. They're called wet and dry because you can mix how much of each that you want. Or they might ask you, do you want to hear the wet or the dry in there? Sometimes singers want to hear reverb in their headphones, so they'll want the wet signal. Whereas voice artists, sometimes we want to hear the dry signal. We don't want to hear all the effects. We just want us so that we know how we sound. All right. Holy cow, that was long. That was a lot more lingo than I thought I was going to deliver today. Anyway, I hope this helps. Go study up on your jargon. Play it again if you have to. Now, get in your booth and record something amazing. Holy cow, it gets hot in these booths. Whew, this is the thing with home booths, everybody. It gets hot. I'm sweating. 20 minutes in here, high energy. It gets hot. So make sure you open your door. Let that cold air in again. Get that heat out of your booth. Anyway, we'll talk to you next time.